I could tell things were going bad the moment I walked into the server room on Monday morning and heard nothing instead of the normal steady hum of cooling fans. That room had been like a second home to me for 8 years, the place where I kept the financial heartbeat of Southwest Building Materials running. Without me, 12,000 construction workers across Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado don't get their paychecks. And when construction workers don't get paid, they don't just complain. They park their machines and walk off the job. I'm Brian Thompson, 48 years old, and I've been the senior database administrator here since the company was about half the size it is now. I manage the payroll backend for everyone from concrete workers in Houston to crane operators in Phoenix. It's not flashy work, but it's honest, and I'm really good at it. Let me explain something about construction payroll. It's not like running numbers for office employees. These guys work in heat, in cold, on weekends, and through holidays. They climb 20 stories up on steel beams, they pour concrete in a 110-degree weather, and they work overtime when storms hit and people need their power back. They earn every dollar, and they deserve to get it on time. The system I take care of isn't some smooth, cloud-based tool you see in sales ads. It's a heavy, complicated setup built on legacy SQL databases, custom scripts, and 8 years of fixes that I've applied carefully, like a skilled mechanic working on an old Harley. I know every workaround, every odd behavior, every possible failure point. When the prevailing wage laws changed in Arizona last year, I rewrote the calculation engine in 3 days. When OSHA updated reporting rules, I built the compliance module from scratch while drinking bourbon and listening to Lynyrd Skynyrd at 2 in the morning. You want to understand how complex this gets? Try calculating overtime for a crew that starts work in Texas on Monday, moves to a job in New Mexico on Wednesday, then finishes the week in Colorado. Each state has different labor laws, tax rates, and union rules. Then add equipment rental time, hazard pay for working near chemical storage, and federal prevailing wages for government contracts. Ashley's Excel sheet was about to face reality, and reality doesn't care about your pivot tables. But corporate doesn't see it that way. They see an old system that needs updating, and they see me as the guy blocking progress. That's where Andrew Rodriguez comes in. Andrew is the VP of Operations, and more importantly, he's the chairman's son. 3 months ago, our company was bought by Rodriguez Family Holdings, a construction giant that owns everything from cement plants to equipment rental businesses. Andrew came in with a mission to simplify operations and remove what he called redundancies. Translation: fire expensive people and replace them with cheaper options. I'd met Andrew a few times before. He's one of those guys who wears a suit to construction sites and stays inside his air-conditioned truck while real workers sweat outside in the sun. He got his MBA from some top school and thinks every business problem can be solved with a PowerPoint and words like digital transformation and operational efficiency. He's never spent a day on a job site, never had to calculate overtime for emergency storm crews, never had to explain to a single mother why her paycheck is late because the system failed. The meeting happened on a Tuesday. Andrew called me into his office along with Patricia Williams from HR. Patricia had been here almost as long as I had, but she always cared more about protecting the company than the employees. She had that nervous energy of someone who knows bad news is coming but has to deliver it with a polite smile. Andrew's office looked like something out of a business magazine: glass desk, leather chairs, and a view of the equipment yard that he probably never even noticed. He was tapping on his tablet when I walked in, making me wait while he finished whatever important task he thought couldn't wait. "Brian," Andrew said without even looking up, "we're restructuring the IT department, moving to a more agile and cost-effective model." I sat down across from him. What does that mean for payroll operations? That's where things get interesting. Andrew finally looked at me, giving me the kind of smile salespeople practice in mirrors. "I want you to meet my niece, Ashley. She just finished her MBA, and she's built an amazing model that's going to transform how we handle payroll. Here's the truth about family businesses. Ability often comes second to family connections. I'd seen it before in other companies, but I thought our operation was too important for that kind of nonsense. I was wrong. Ashley Rodriguez walked in like she owned the place, which, in a way, she kind of did. She was 25, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than what most of our workers earn in a week, and holding an iPad like it was the answer to everything. "Hi, Brian," she said, offering a perfectly manicured hand. "I've been reviewing your processes. Very detailed, but also very manual. I think we can improve it." The way she said manual made it sound like I was still using an abacus and stone tablets. "Better how?" I asked, even though I already had a bad feeling about where this was going. Ashley placed her iPad on Andrew's glass desk and started swiping through screens with the confidence of someone who had never seen a real system fail. "I've built a complete payroll solution in Excel. It's cloud-based, easy to use, and can handle all the calculations you're currently doing with those old SQL databases." I stared at her for a few seconds. "Excel? You want to run payroll for 12,000 construction workers using a spreadsheet?" "Not just any spreadsheet," Ashley said, sounding slightly defensive. "This includes pivot tables, conditional formatting, and automated macros. It's basically like a database, but much more user-friendly." User-friendly. That's what people always say when they want to replace something that actually works with something that just looks nicer. I've been doing this long enough to know that user-friendly usually means it works fine until something goes wrong, and then nobody understands how to fix it. I looked at Andrew, hoping he would show even a little doubt about how crazy this sounded. "Is this a joke?" "It's innovation, Brian," Andrew said, leaning back in his chair. "Ashley's model can reduce processing time by 60% and cut our IT costs significantly." There it was. Cut IT costs. Which really meant they could fire me and pay Ashley much less. I'd seen this happen before in other companies. A young MBA comes in, promises big results with a half-ready solution. The experienced employee gets pushed out, and 6 months later they're begging the old guy to come back and fix everything. "The payroll run is Friday," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Today is Tuesday. If you're planning to switch systems, you need to understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just adding hours and multiplying by hourly rates." I started counting on my fingers. "We have prevailing wage calculations for government jobs, union and non-union differences that change depending on project type and how many days a crew has worked in a row, equipment rental tracking that must match GPS data, OSHA reporting requirements, multi-state tax withholdings where someone can start the week in Texas and end it in Colorado." Ashley was nodding like she understood, but I could tell she was losing track. She thought she got it because she'd read about payroll in a textbook. "I've included all of that," she said, interrupting me. "My model uses lookup tables for state rules and automatic tax calculations." Lookup tables. Seriously, the Arizona prevailing wage database alone has 847 different job classifications, all with different pay rates depending on the county. Union contracts have overtime rules that can confuse even a tax lawyer. Some workers get time and a half after 8 hours, double time after 12, but only on certain types of projects. Then there's hazard pay that applies if they're working within 500 feet of chemical storage, and even that changes depending on the chemicals and distance. "Ashley," I said, trying to stay calm, "have you ever actually calculated prevailing wages for a federal highway project?" "I've studied the regulations," she replied. "Studying and doing are not the same thing." "You know what happens when you mess up prevailing wages on a federal contract?" "The Department of Labor steps in and audits everything. They can fine us for every single hour that was calculated wrong, going back up to 3 years. Andrew waved his hand like it was no big deal. "We'll have compliance reviews." Ashley's model has error checking built in. Error checking in Excel, right? Like some conditional formatting is going to catch it when a crew foreman in El Paso types his time wrong and Ashley's lookup formula pulls the wrong wage rate for 40 guys working a government project. "Brian," Patricia finally said, "we'll need you to give Ashley all the required passwords and documentation for a smooth handover." "Documentation?" I let out a short laugh, but there was no real humor in it. Most of the important processes are in custom scripts I built over the last 8 years. The real knowledge isn't written down anywhere, it's in my head. That's how systems that actually work in the real world are made. They're not built from some textbook. They're created by people who've done the job long enough to know where all the hidden problems are. I know that the time clock system in the Phoenix warehouse has a bug where it sometimes double stamps entries after 11 p.m., but only on Wednesdays, and only when the network load is high. I know that the union contract for the concrete crews has a clause about meal breaks that almost nobody remembers, but if you miss it, the guys don't get their meal penalty pay. Ashley doesn't know any of that. She's got her nice spreadsheet with color-coded cells and fancy formulas, but she's never had to explain to Big Jim Patterson why his crane operators are showing up as earning less than minimum wage because some calculation went wrong. "Then we'll need you to document everything before you leave," Andrew said. And that's when I knew for sure they had already made up their minds. They weren't asking for my opinion or trying to understand why their plan was going to fail. They were handing me my exit and expecting me to train my replacement. "When's my last day?" I asked. "Friday," Andrew said. "After the payroll run. We want to make sure the transition goes smoothly. And if it doesn't go smoothly?" Ashley jumped in quickly. "It will. I've tested my model a lot." "On what data?" "Sample data from the HR system. Plus some theoretical cases. Sample data, theoretical cases." She had tested her revolutionary payroll system on made-up numbers. It was like testing a race car by driving it slowly around a parking lot and then thinking it could handle the Daytona 500. I stood up, my knees cracking the way they do when you've been sitting too long or when you're about to make a decision you might regret or celebrate. "All right then, I guess we'll see what happens." "That's the spirit," Andrew said, already looking back at his tablet. "Patricia will have your severance papers ready by the end of the day." I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to Ashley. "One piece of advice?" She looked up from her iPad, probably expecting some tech tip about database connections or file types. "When the system fails," I said, "and it will fail, don't panic. Just remember that 12,000 people are counting on their paychecks to pay rent and buy food. That might help you decide what matters most." The look on her face told me she still didn't understand. She thought this was just numbers on a screen. "It'll be fine," she said, but I could hear doubt starting to show in her voice as Excel's memory usage spiked and the program began to freeze. Friday morning arrived, and it was time for the final handoff. Ashley came in early with her laptop and that nervous energy you see in new drivers before their first big race. "Ready to make history?" she asked, trying to sound confident. I packed up my personal stuff while she settled into my workstation. My coffee mug that said World's OKest Database Admin, a photo of my Harley Davidson, and a bottle of bourbon I kept for emergencies. It felt right to take it with me. Something told me they'd need it more than I would. "The bank deadline for direct deposits is noon," I reminded her. "After that, people won't get paid until Monday." "Got it," Ashley said, already overwhelmed trying to process everything. I started to leave, then paused. I looked at her screen where Excel was struggling through the payroll data like a machine trying to chew through something way too big. "Ashley, one last thing. When this goes wrong, and it will go wrong, don't try to fix it by running the calculations again. Every time you reprocess, you create duplicate entries. Fix the issue first, then run it again." She wasn't really paying attention. She was staring at her screen where half the cells were showing errors. Patricia walked me to the security desk where Eddie Morrison was waiting with my severance papers. Eddie was a good guy, an ex-Marine who knew the value of doing your job right. "Sorry to see you go, Brian," Eddie said as I signed the documents. "This doesn't feel right. It's just business, Eddie. Bad business, but still business." I drove home in my pickup, windows down, Creedence playing on the radio. I should have been mad, but mostly I felt like I was watching a disaster movie where you know what's coming but the characters haven't realized it yet. My phone started vibrating around 10:30 a.m., a text from Kevin Martinez, one of the payroll clerks. "Brian, Ashley's spreadsheet is showing strange numbers. My overtime says I worked negative hours last week." Then another message from Danny Walsh in the Phoenix office. "Man, according to this payroll report, I make $847 an hour as a concrete finisher. I wish that was true." By 11 a.m., my phone was blowing up. People from all over our region were looking at their pay stubs in the employee portal, and nothing made sense. Employee ID numbers were getting mixed up with Social Security numbers. Job titles were all over the place. Crane operators showing up as office clerks, concrete workers listed as executives. The craziest one came from Tony Ramirez, a foreman in El Paso. "Brian, my pay stub says I worked 2,847 hours last week, and my net pay is negative $12,000. Did I steal from the company, or did the company take from me?" I could clearly imagine exactly what had gone wrong. During the data import process, Ashley had switched around the column headers. Employee ID numbers were being used as hours worked, and hours worked were being read as pay rates. Excel was trying to calculate wages using Social Security numbers like they were multipliers. But the real problem was still on its way. The strange numbers in the employee portal were just the beginning. The real chaos would hit at noon when the bank tried to process Ashley's payroll file for direct deposits. At 11:45 a.m., my phone started ringing. It was Patricia from HR. "Brian." Her voice sounded tense and worried. "We need to talk. Ashley's payroll file is showing some strange issues." Strange issues? According to her numbers, we owe the federal government $2.3 million in tax withholdings this week, but we only took in $180,000 from employee paychecks. I pulled into my driveway and stayed sitting in the truck, listening as Patricia explained how Ashley's Excel sheet had created what was basically a mathematical black hole. Also, Patricia continued, "The bank is asking why we are trying to send $47,000 to a concrete mixer in Albuquerque, while at the same time taking $23,000 from a crane operator's pay for something called equipment rental recovery fees. Has anyone informed Andrew yet? He's been in meetings all day." Ashley said she could fix it. Famous last words. I had heard that before from every confident newcomer who thought they could fix a sinking ship with duct tape and hope. "Patricia," I said, "you should probably cancel those meetings." By 2 p.m., Southwest Building Materials was no longer just a construction company, it was a complete mess. The bank rejected Ashley's payroll file so hard it might as well have burnt their systems. According to their automated message, we were trying to send invalid amounts to invalid accounts using invalid routing methods. The employee portal crashed under the pressure of 12,000 workers trying to understand why their pay stubs looked like they were written by a confused accountant having a bad day. Some workers were showing overtime rates of $847 per hour. Others had negative pay and somehow owed the company money just for working there. But the real trouble began when the union stepped in. Big Jim Patterson had been representing construction workers for 25 years. He was built like a football player, spoke like a truck driver, and had zero tolerance for corporate nonsense. When his workers didn't get paid, Jim didn't send polite emails. He shut everything down. By 3 p.m., Jim was standing on the back of a pickup truck outside our main office with a megaphone, and trucks were lining up behind him. "Southwest Building Materials thinks they can play with workers' paychecks," his voice echoed across the lot. "If they can't pay us right, maybe we should stop working for them." The wildcat strike spread faster than rumors at a school reunion. Phoenix sites closed first, then Albuquerque, then the highway project near Denver. By 4 p.m., every Southwest Building Materials site in 4 states had stopped. 12,000 workers sitting in their trucks, posting videos online, calling local news channels. The scenes were strange but powerful. aerial views of quiet construction sites, interviews with workers holding pay stubs that made no sense, union representatives explaining to reporters how a company that builds half the region couldn't handle basic payroll. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Eddie and others still inside the building. Ashley locked herself in the conference room. Eddie texted. She has been trying to fix her spreadsheet for 3 hours, but every time she fixes one thing, something else breaks. Another message came. Andrew has been yelling at its support all day. Apparently, Ashley deleted the original data when she tried to reload the file. That made me laugh a little. Of course she did. When people panic and things fail, they try to start over, but starting over in Excel without a backup means losing everything. Ashley had just erased the only copy of the original payroll data, and the backup system only worked if someone set it up correctly. Tuesday morning, I was sitting on my porch drinking coffee and reading news stories about our payroll disaster when my phone rang. It was Andrew Rodriguez, Brian. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept. "We need to talk." "Morning, Andrew. I saw you on the news last night. Good interview. I liked the part where you said the problem was caused by unexpected technical issues during a routine update. Stop joking. The state labor board is starting investigations in 4 states. The union is talking about a class action lawsuit. The bank froze our accounts because our payroll file made their system think we were hacked. Sounds like a serious problem. I need you to come back, consulting basis, name your price." I had been waiting for this call since Friday. $15,000, cash up front, plus a new contract at double my old pay. Done. I'm not finished. I want a public apology from you and Ashley, posted on the company website, saying the payroll problem happened because of a poorly prepared system. There was a long pause. Then he said, "Fine. And one more thing. I report directly to the CIO now, not operations. I'm done dealing with people who think Excel is enterprise software. Whatever you need, Brian, just fix it." I drove back to the office. Wednesday morning. The parking lot still had union workers camped out, but they waved when they saw me. Jim Patterson walked over as I got out of my truck. "Brian, tell me you're here to save us." "Working on it, Jim. You should see results by Thursday morning." "What about back pay for the time we lost?" "Every dollar. With overtime for those who were scheduled." I walked into the building confidently. For the next few days, I was basically in charge. The server room felt familiar, like coming home. I turned on my workstation and started going through the damage Ashley left behind. It was worse than I expected. She hadn't only damaged the payroll data, she had locked database tables, created circular references in tax calculations, and somehow made the system think we had 847,000 employees named error. It took me 18 hours of nonstop work, but I rebuilt everything using archived transaction logs, real backups stored in systems Ashley didn't even know about. By Thursday morning, I had a clean payroll file ready. I sent it to the bank at 6 a.m. The transfer went through perfectly. 12,000 workers would wake up and see their correct pay, plus extra for the lost days. Friday morning, I walked into Andrew's office. He looked exhausted, like he had aged years and days. "It's done," I said. "Everyone has been paid correctly, including compensation." "Thank you," he said quietly. "Where is Ashley?" "Moved to marketing research. Turns out connections only help so much when you cost the company millions." "And my new office?" Andrew pointed to the corner office with windows overlooking the yard. "All yours. I even had a new coffee machine installed." I walked to my desk and sat down. Outside the window, I could see work starting again. Cranes moving, trucks heading out with full crews. My phone buzzed. A message from Eddie. "Heard Ashley is in marketing now. Think she can handle Ed numbers?" I opened my desk drawer and took out a bottle of good bourbon I had been saving. This moment deserved it. Sometimes old methods work best. Sometimes experience matters more than new ideas. And sometimes, when companies try to fix what is not broken, they learn the hard way that some jobs need more than just a degree and a spreadsheet. I poured a drink into my coffee mug and lifted it toward the window. Here's to keeping things running and making sure workers get paid what they deserve. That is worth celebrating.